What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Parent's Guide to Gaming. My name is Andrew, and if you're a parent of younger kids like mine who are just getting to the age where they can play video games, and you're looking for some games that you can play together and both actually have fun, I'm here to help. The dream of every gamer parent is to share that hobby with their kids, but getting started can be tricky. Some games you enjoy might still be too tough for your kids, while the games they are able to play aren't that enjoyable for you. I'm going to share a few games that my 5-year-old daughter and I have both enjoyed playing together, and maybe you and your kids will too. The first game I want to talk about is Mario Party Superstars. I picked this Mario Party game because it's the most recent, but pretty much any Mario Party game, it's the same idea. This was one of the first games that my daughter and I were able to successfully play together from start to finish. I think part of that was because the game is turn-based. This allows kids to take their time and learn what all the buttons do, what their options are, how to roll the dice, how to get things done, etc. There are a lot of difficulty controls that you as a parent have. You can set the computer players that you're playing with to be super easy so they're not getting in the way of what you and your child are doing while you're playing this game. As the kids get older, feel free to bump those difficulties up and make things a little bit more challenging. But when it's just you and your kid, it's nice to be able to just focus on learning the game, playing it together, and not having the computer player coming in and stealing the victory from either of you. Another thing that I think is really nice about Mario Party is turn limits. You can set the turn limits to, I think 10 is the minimum, and you can set it up way higher than that if you're insane. This allows for you to kind of set the limit for how long this game is going to last. We've all been there when a Mario Party game goes on for way too long. Just imagine that with your kid. So having these turn limits and being able to set some of the settings before going into the game can really ease any of the rough edges that you might experience playing Mario Party with a young child. So Mario Party is broken up into two different games, essentially, for people who may not know. The first being the traditional board game where you turn-based, roll your dice, move across the board, things happen to you depending on where you land on the space, and you adapt and try to somewhat strategize in order to have the most stars at the end of the game. You're also collecting coins that you can use to buy items and move around the board in different ways, and also your number of coins affects your placement in the rankings as well, but stars are the priority. So you have the board game side. The other side is mini games. And these mini games are pretty simple usually. Sometimes it's like a race. Sometimes you're trying to stay alive while a player is trying to eliminate you somehow, whether that's by like throwing the level off balance or shooting you with a cannon or whatever kind of silly, zany thing it might be. However, the nice part is that all of these mini games are super simple. Usually only one or two buttons. In the first Mario Party that came out for Switch, it was a lot of motion control stuff, but it always only required one Joy-Con. So pretty easy for kids to grasp. There is a practice mode that will run for an unlimited amount of time until all players are ready to jump into the game for real, allowing your kid the time to practice or for you to explain the rules so that they don't feel cheated when they go into the mini game and don't understand what it's asking of them. The last reason that I think that the Mario Party games are good for playing with your kid is the bonus star mechanic. So at the end of every Mario Party game, the game awards bonus stars for silly little things like whoever landed on the most red spaces or whoever was last place in mini games or whatever kind of nonsense it is. And when you're playing with your friends, your adult friends, and you guys are having a few drinks and just, trying to have a fun evening, and you're actually being somewhat competitive, these bonus stars can be a bit controversial. Sometimes it feels like the game screws out the best player and gives the victory to the person who was doing the worst. However, when you're playing with your small child or your young child, This mechanic can help bridge the skill gap that is obviously going to be there with you as an adult and your kid as a kid. So, you may be 3 or 4 stars ahead, but at the end, when your child gets awarded a star for landing on the most red spaces or whatever the case may be, it bridges that gap. It makes the game be a little bit closer, more competitive, making the kid feel better. Also, it could completely screw you and the kid could win, and they're never going to forget that or let you live it down. So I think this is a really fun mechanic for when you're playing with your child. I do think it's pretty irritating when I'm playing with my friends, and I would have won if it hadn't been for that one stupid bonus star. The next game I want to talk about is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, even though Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a fighting game, it's really simple to grasp the basics. You got a couple attacks, you got jumps, and the idea is to try not to fall or get knocked off of the level. Super Smash Bros. Walks the line between fighting game and party game really well. Definitely better than any fighting game, but probably better than a lot of games just in general. Part of the reason for this is that there are items which introduce an element of chaos to the matches. Items that you can get, your kid can get, your computer opponents can get, whoever, and it can turn the tides in their favor. It can just make the match more ridiculous by having like a giant puppy licking the screen. We're not playing Project M tournament rules here with our kids, so I suggest embracing the chaos, embrace the items, and just have fun. There are also a ton of settings for you as the parent to shape the game how you want it. So when I'm playing with my daughter, I pretty much always set it to like 2.5 minute timer. That way she's never out of the action because she lost all of her lives. We're always playing till the timer runs out. I also like to set the levels to just like the battlefield structure so that the theme of the level will change and be more interesting. However, the structure is pretty much always the same, and that way she's not dying a bunch to like weird level mechanics. As she gets a little bit older, we may do some more traditional levels, but right now we're just focusing on the basics. I also like to set the ultimate, which is a move that each character has that can just do a ton of damage to the opponents. I like to set that move to a timer that builds up as you attack and take damage, rather than the typical orb that whoever smashes it first gets their ultimate. Because with this setting on, everybody gets their ultimate. She always gets to see what hers does for the character that she picked in a match. And if it was something that she had to chase down and try to hit, it probably wouldn't happen nearly as frequently. One of the things that my daughter really loves about this game is the amount of characters, and a lot of them she knows from games that she's seen me play, or like the Mario movie and her other Mario games, things like that. So obviously she loves playing as like the princesses she knows, Princess Peach, Princess Daisy. But then, there's a Princess Zelda on there, and she can recognize that that's a princess even if she hasn't played that game. So she loves that. She likes to try out a lot of the other characters that maybe she doesn't know. She thinks it's hilarious to play as the girl with guns in her shoes, being Bayonetta. So just the sheer variety of characters is definitely a win for this game. You can also play on a team, which is what we typically do. I'll set up a game, me and her on a team versus a couple of computer players, with the rules that I explained earlier, and we just have fun going back and forth with that. You can also play co-op in some of the like story or character specific missions in the game, but typically we just do like a regular Smash battle, me and her versus some computer players, and that way she gets to feel the joy of winning a match even if she didn't play as well, because I can kind of carry the team and we both get to revel in our victory. We don't always win though. Sometimes we have to deal with a tough loss. The next game I want to talk about is Super Mario Wonder. And I know there's a theme here. We play a lot of games on Switch. They have this demographic. It's something that Nintendo has done a really good job of cornering this part of the market. But in Super Mario Wonder, it's a typical 2D platformer, meaning that you are running from left to right, jumping on platforms, jumping on enemies' heads, trying to get from the beginning of the level to the end of the level without dying. If you've ever played a Mario game before, this follows the exact same structure, but it's modern. They've introduced a bunch of new mechanics and twists like the Wonder Seeds and the badges and stuff. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, you can check out my review on this channel or check out a podcast episode we did on Your Friendly Neighborhood Gamers where we broke down this game in depth, and I actually interviewed my daughter at the end of the episode to get her thoughts on the game. But this is another game that my daughter and I have actually played from start to finish together. And a lot of that is because player one, being me typically, controls the flow of the action. The camera follows player one, unless they die. When that happens, the camera shifts to player two, and that can be a bit chaotic. You kind of have to deal with that situation when it arises. However, when you're playing with a kid, they're probably going to die, and the camera will get passed to you pretty quickly, so it's not that big of a deal. It is something to keep in mind. But with that, you get to kind of control the flow of the level, and your partner, being your kid, gets to kind of just tag along for the adventure. However, this isn't like Super Mario Odyssey where they're just playing like a dumb hat or whatever. They're actually in the level. They're doing things. They're accomplishing goals. You're working together towards that goal of finishing the level. Players can revive each other, which is huge. And actually, there were lots of times where my daughter would get me out of a sticky situation by reviving me, and the other way around as well. So when somebody dies or gets hit one too many times, they enter a bubble and float around the screen. And if their partner pops that bubble, then they're back in the action. The visuals and environments are a blast. Like, the game is just a visual and audio treat. There's a bunch of silly nonsense that happens in this game. It's fantastic. We were laughing a bunch. Even my wife, just watching us play, was having a good time watching some of the silly, zany things that happen in this game. My daughter loves the final fight with Bowser and asks if we can just replay that every now and then. So there's a lot to enjoy in this game, just visually and aesthetically. Like I mentioned with Super Smash Bros. Earlier, my daughter loves being able to pick her characters. So she can play as her two princesses, Peach and Daisy. You've also got Mario and Luigi. You've got a bunch of different colored Yoshis. You got Nabbit. You got some Toads, Toadette. And obviously she loves playing as the princesses, but playing as Yoshi was also fun for her as well. And the reason for that is that Yoshi and Nabbit cannot die unless they fall down a pit or fall in a hole. So getting hit by enemies, whatever, that's not going to kill them. It's not going to end the level. This is great for them if they're playing on their own or if they're playing with you. It's also a really good option for people who are just new to 2D platformer games. Now, the trade-off for this is that you cannot use items when you're playing as these characters. So you don't get to use the mushrooms or the drill that lets you go like in the ceiling or turn into an elephant or all those crazy things that the items let you do. So there is some incentive as you get used to the game and as you feel more comfortable to play as the main cast of characters. And the thing I really liked about this game was that it's still a 2D Mario game. So there were plenty of times where I had to carry my daughter to the finish line of a level. There were plenty of times where the level was challenging for me, but not to the point where we couldn't finish it, but to the point where I didn't feel like I was just holding my control stick to the right and getting us to the end, and that was it. Like, it's still a very fun game for me as someone who's been playing video games my whole life. I really liked this game. I had a great time playing it. And being able to bring my daughter along with me throughout this game and throughout all the levels just added to the overall experience. And she enjoyed just being there for that. So even if she was dying and getting caught in a bubble over and over and I was having to bring her out, when we finished the level and we grabbed that flag, we were both excited. So I think this is a great one for a parent and kid to play together. So leaving Nintendo Land and moving into PlayStation Land, another game that we've enjoyed is Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Now, this is one of the tougher games that I've talked about so far in this video. It requires a bit more from the player when it comes to puzzle solving, controls, and button combinations. It can be tough for a child to pull off some of the maneuvers that the game asks of the player. But when we hit these points, I would just walk my daughter through the steps, and if that didn't work, I'd just do it for her real quick, and then we were back on our way. Sackboy: Big Adventure is a 3D platformer where you play as Sackboy, and it's very reminiscent of some of the like 3D World Mario games. It's not quite top down as far as camera perspective, but it is pretty zoomed out and kind of up above the characters. You're running around these ridiculous zany levels. The humor and the tone of the game is excellent. It's one of my favorite parts probably. And you're trying to get collectibles. You're trying to make it to the end of the level, trying to find secrets. And in some cases, you're throwing each other. You're working together to achieve these goals. There's also a ton of customization for Sackboy. You can dress up your Sackboy or Sackgirl with all sorts of different outfits and props. This is a ton of fun for me as someone who really enjoys customization in video games, and it's fun for my daughter, who is a lot like me and enjoys customization in video games. Talking about another downside is that because this game is on PlayStation 5, your kid has to use that big beefy PS5 controller. Now, for you and me, for most of us, this controller feels pretty par for the course. It feels pretty good in your hands. Like, they have made a really solid controller for the average gamer. However, a 5-year-old little girl, 6-year-old little girl, 5-year-old little boy, whatever, they are going to have a little bit more of a challenge trying to hold that controller and use the buttons that this game is asking of them, because the game does make use of all of the face buttons and the triggers for certain actions. So it can be a little bit unwieldy. It's a game that my daughter and I tried when she was a little younger. We played the first few early levels, got to a point where it was like, oh man, this is asking too much of us. However, we've gone back to it not too long ago, and she was able to grasp more of those mechanics and understand kind of like what the game was asking of her as far as the triggers and buttons. And I think as she continues to get older, it will only get easier, and before long, she's going to be way better at it than I am. So I know all of the games that I've talked about so far have been console exclusives, most of them Nintendo. So I have an honorable mention here, and that is MultiVersus. MultiVersus is a game that you can play across multiple platforms, and it's essentially like Super Smash Bros., except it's all Warner Brothers characters. However, it has a lot of similarities to Fortnite in how it has a battle pass and a store, and you're trying to accomplish quests and find currency, like acquire currency to get new characters and new skins and all that kind of stuff. So there is those type of things to keep in mind. However, the core gameplay is pretty much Smash Brothers, except there's no items, and you can feel that the polish that Super Smash Bros. Has acquired over its multiple iterations is not quite there in this game. I personally have had a lot of fun with it so far. My daughter and I have recently just started playing it. I could see her eventually just wanting to go back to Smash Bros. Because partly the game doesn't quite feel as good. Partly the character roster, they have like Arya Stark and Jason Voorhees and some Adventure Time characters, and it's just a really interesting smorgasbord of characters from Warner Brothers catalog, which for somebody like me, I find kind of interesting and funny. But for my daughter, it's like she's not going to watch Game of Thrones. She has no idea who Arya Stark is. She's not going to watch Adventure Time, at least not for a while. So there's just kind of a disconnect for that audience. However, the gameplay is solid, and it is something to throw out there if you do not have a Nintendo Switch. MultiVersus, for me, I've been having a good time with it. My daughter has asked if we could play it some more over the last few evenings, so it is something that we're having a good time with, but I put it in honorable mention status because I'm not sure how long it's going to last or if we're just going to end up going back to Smash Brothers. But I wanted to put something more multi-platform on this list because I recognize that Nintendo definitely has this market cornered, and so a lot of the best options are probably going to be on the Switch. Now, this isn't all of the games I could talk about in this type of video, and I plan on revisiting this topic as time goes on and I play more games with my kids. But what are some games that you and your younger children have enjoyed playing together? Let me know down in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video and the kind of content that I'm making on this channel, please support me by leaving a like and subscribing. Now that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.